Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I'm so grateful that you're here. Happy equinox. It is the equinox point today, actually this afternoon at the east coast of the United States, so 3:20 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That would be 12:20 p.m. Pacific Time. So hope everyone is doing well. Welcome back for all of those who are subscribers and regular viewers. And if you're new to this channel, welcome. It's so great to have you here. I do, in fact, appreciate each and every one of you. And if you find this content helpful, inspirational, if it's guiding you along the way and you think other people will find it, you can share it. You can comment on the content. You can subscribe and you can hit that like button, because all of those things actually influence the algorithm that is likely going to share this content in other people's feeds. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Independent content creators like myself that have no sponsorship, that are doing it all organically, which apparently is pretty much one of the hardest things at this point to do. But I'm okay with that. I'm okay with our little cul-de-sac over here, not getting a ton of exposure or attention. And that way we can have a much more intimate and communal type of experience. And the lines of communication can be really strong. And there is no communion without communication. And Venus in Scorpio, despite her reservations about being in such a sign, is at a point today in Scorpio that is really highlighting how important it is that we're communicating with each other, that we are in communion with each other, because that's where our power comes from. If we want to have power of communion, we have to also realize that the communion and communication have the same base in terms of the language. So we have to be communicating with each other either verbally, telepathically, energetically, and not just each other, but with the planet herself. Ooh, the planet. Let's get right into that, shall we? And we'll talk all about this equinox astrology for today. We'll get into this intuitive reading for today, and the goddess is afoot. And so there were, I'm sure you know this by now, but just in case you don't, there was a very notable earthquake yesterday in Melbourne, Australia, which is something that hasn't had the strongest quake they've had in a really long time, like decades and decades. So we know that there's something happening there. And there's also there's three very notable earthquakes that happened yesterday into this morning. One was in Melbourne. That was a pretty big one, about almost 6 on the Richter scale. And again, that's the biggest one they've had in decades and decades. So that's pretty big. Also, too, we find that there was also a very large 6.7, 6.9, roughly, right off the coast of Chile, in the ocean, very large. And also early this morning there was another fairly large quake between the 6 and 7 range, also on that side of the western part of Central and South America, the Eastern Pacific, right? There was another quake that was very large that was right off the coast of Nicaragua as well. And if you go to my social media, you can link into the Facebook and Telegram from the description box below. If you haven't already, I put some posts up and made some connections here with the Schumann, because the Schumann definitely did spike. And didn't I just talk about that yesterday, about how there is evidence now that is documenting the connection between the Schumann resonance and seismic activity, right? So when there's seismic activity and the earth is moving underneath, there are correlating changes to the Schumann resonance that are similar to the types of changes that we would see when we're getting impacted with solar weather. Now, we are getting impacted with solar weather right now as well. There's a coronal hole stream that is connected to us. And what does that mean? That means the magnetics from the sun reach out and make a connection with the magnetics of our planet, and it creates a coronal hole stream, right? It's a stream in which the solar weather just sails right to us. And so we're already getting some of that solar wind. There's going to be more coming. And so the Schumann did spike again today, last night, not as high as it did yesterday, in between those two massive earthquakes. And like I said, you can check out the visual because I showed that the Australian one and the one in Chile, or right off the coast of Chile, same latitude in the Pacific, same latitude, right? And that was a big surge. And then there was another one. So again, are you waking up in the middle of the night? Are you feeling agitated? Is your sleep being impacted? Every time there's a spike in the Schumann, that means the electromagnetic field of the planet is oscillating at a faster frequency. It does impact us because we have our own electromagnetic field around us. And so it certainly expresses itself in different ways for different people, depending on your own unique physiology and your own anatomy, like what's going on for you energetically. A lot of people report, like I said, the disturbances in the sleep, agitation, ringing in the ears, headaches, these types of symptoms. Many people that have become way more accustomed to that higher frequency of electromagnetic frequency, and the oscillation of the field, also report when it gets very high that there's a feeling of euphoria, right? A feeling of well-being. And when the Schumann is low is when, and I'm one of those people that went from feeling all of the effects between me and the other. And I suspect too, although I would have to really go back and kind of track my own progress here, that after my walk-in experience in 2019, that changed drastically, because my internal resonance very much changed as well. And my outer resonance, those two things are correlated and connected. So that changed with my walk-in experience. And then from there, I suspect, but I can't say for sure, that the Schumann activity started to have that more of a positive euphoric effect. But I will say that the last couple of days it has been very difficult for sleep. Although last night I did sleep all the way through the night, and I have more of a feeling of well-being. Although I will say that many people are getting sick right now. Of course, that comes with the changing of the seasons. If you live in a place that has seasonal change, but it does appear that people are getting sick with the couve, and I definitely am feeling that underlying aspect of my immune system functioning a little bit at a higher RPM, right? The thermostat has kicked up a little bit now in my body, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And my partner had a coworker who tested positive for the couve, and is ill, and so the whole shop is getting tested now, and so he's waiting to get his rapid result test, which I'm not thrilled about, but it is what it is. So I'm curious to see if he's going to come back, because last time this happened, he came back inconclusive. But we both got very sick when we traveled in 2019. We were traveling for 2 months throughout Western and Central Europe, and we both got really, really sick. And so I feel like that was when we got initially exposed. And many people report having very similar symptoms much earlier than the March era in the United States that things were being reported. And of course, we know that the border got closed from China very early on in 2020. And so in late 2019 overseas, it's not really that much of a stretch to think that whatever is going on was being released on some level, or was making the rounds in over on the other side of the Atlantic. So we got hit very hard much later. And then I had my walk-in. So that was very fascinating. Anyway, you can check out all that stuff on social media. I have a bunch of the graph and pointing stuff out and showing you on the map. And so I've been tracking, and certainly La Palma, and we talked about this yesterday. And of course, the news of the earthquake in Melbourne is going to take up all of the space in the realm of news. But it's important to keep tracking La Palma, because as the lava slows, it's very likely, or there's a potential, that the pressure will start to build again. And there is something to be said for La Palma having a major eruption and earthquake, especially an earthquake, because that's a tsunami in the Atlantic heading right to the East Coast, and the wet, the Eastern Atlantic. So it's just things to pay attention to, just to be mindful and aware. And if you're plugged into the planet energetically, you will start to get, and people are, I'm getting all kinds of messages. What's happening? I can feel something building, and we all can feel it. Like, let's just be real here. We all feel something building. And it's important that, again, that we are connected to our innate. We are trusting our gut. We are trusting that we're exactly where we need to be, and we will be directed by one way or another. We will be directed where we need to go, right? And to trust that process, okay? And with the equinox today, here is our balance point. The sun moves into Libra, and we are now moving into the part of the year that not only is the descent, right? Especially this season, right? This is officially the season where the darkness overpowers the light, okay? It does overpower the light directly, because now, as this balance point of light and dark in terms of access to sunlight and where we are in our orbit around the sun and the tilt of the planet and all of the things that go along with this, it will start getting darker and darker and darker. And we cannot push this part away from us. And this is what I talk about, what rules Libra, what planet? Well, it's Venus. Right? So the return of the feminine, the goddess, the earth, right? This is, and we have eclipse season coming in this season that is distinctly Pleiadian in nature. So again, connection to the earth, that is the Pleiadian mission here, is to bring us into alignment with the natural processes, the natural cycles, the actual, the law of nature, and have us be in alignment with it and to resonate with it. And that is really the only way. And all of the everything else going on outside of that is trying to mitigate through technology and through artificial means, or just scrambling to use the mind. That's the other thing about the nodes shifting into Taurus and Scorpio, right? They're going to shift into Taurus and Scorpio, and it's going to be so much more about feeling on a natural, resonance of Taurus, right? The earth, and the feeling of Scorpio and the power of our relationships and where we're coming from with that. And so it's going to be interesting. I really do want to get a report out for the whole equinox. I'm working on it. I'm supposed to be traveling. I have a funeral service tomorrow. Things are up in the air now because, possible couve, it's everything is up in the air, and I feel like that is actually exactly the perfect representation of this equinox, because it's not so much that it's up in the air, although that has come up this week, has it not, in terms of where we can ground ourselves, right, where we can draw our power from and to trust this process. But when you're in that state of balance, and you're going to see in the reading today, it's all over the reading in terms of balance and the feminine, right? And the feminine is stillness, darkness, passivity, reception, right? The space within that we cannot turn away from, we cannot ignore, right? We have to embrace this part of ourselves as the polarity, because when the polarity comes together, it is the choice point with that polarity that allows us to catalyze a alchemical reaction and create something new and precious, right? This is the nature of our reality. And it's so exemplified with the equinox point, because it is that moment of 0 point, that stasis, the fulcrum, right? It is the place where the two sides of the seesaw are so perfectly balanced that you find yourself floating in air, right? It seems to be perfectly aligned. And now that the sun will be here, and Venus ruling Libra, right? Libra is distinctly a masculine sign, because it's air, mostly because it's air, right? It's got that, and it's cardinal. There's an application, there's movement, there's momentum here. But the momentum is about applying our sensitivity to the world around us and transfiguring in or ourselves. And we learned all about that through Virgo season. So the moon or the sun's going to make its transit through the very last degree of Virgo today into Libra, and we're going to find that stasis point. And now everything's going to be about the relationship, our interpersonal relationships, the balance of relationships as we move through the next half of the year up to the spring equinox. Will be all about the power of our relationships, the form of relationship, justice, fairness, balance, the power of the symbolism that we all participate in charging with our own relational energy, the creative process through Sagittarius, and then Capricorn. I mean, the whole way, all the way around to the spring equinox, it's all about us in relation to other and what that means. And so no more can we be completely hyper-focused in our own creative expression now with the individual process we had all year since the solstice to go through this process. And now it's time to apply that to a balanced structure. And the equinox is a beautiful moment, right? A beautiful moment to accept the entire picture and the balance that is necessary and is required for alchemical transformation and creation, right? Creation and transformation are certainly the same thing, right? You don't create something because everything that's here is already here. And the creation comes from the transformation of the energy that exists at the base level of infinite potential. That's part of the Pisces energy, right? Neptune in Pisces is consistently bringing us back around to the fact that it all comes from the same infinite potential of Source, the infinite creator of Source, right? The Akashic records, the ocean of vibration, it all comes from there. And so when everything else dissolves away and we can only find ourselves immersed in this place, it's really about what do we take from this space and bring it back into manifestation. And we saw so much with that full moon that's just days ago of how no matter what, we all differentiate back into this new seed point of creation. And we are still coming from one single beam of light, right? It's when it goes through the prism, we see that everything has its own unique wavelength. So I'm going to show you, we're going to go into the reading. Guys, please take very good care of yourselves. I mean, with a seasonal change, it's normal to start getting sick and your body to adjust to the change in the seasons and the change in the dynamics and the change in everything. It's normal to have an adjustment period, but with all of this activity happening at a global level, down at a natural level with the Schumann and the planet herself and these earthquakes and volcanoes, of course, as well. Like there's a lot of pressure being released, and we want to support the process, not resist it and try to control it. That's really, and the goddess is here, and you're going to see it, to be part of this process, but we have to receive, right? We have to listen and to receive. So here is our reading for today, and the first thing that we're going to see here is our Ace of Cups reversed. And so the Ace in all of the suits is this seed point of that element, right? It's the undifferentiated moment of that element. And in this case, we're talking about water, spirit, emotion, feeling, right? What flows through us and fills any vessel that it finds. Water shapes the landscape. It's powerful. There's that really famous Bruce Lee type of quote that you see around, and that Melody if you've ever listened to Melody Sheep, I love Melody Sheep's mashups, and the one about Bruce Lee is particularly good, and I'll link it in the social media at some point today because I always go back to it. Water can flow, but water can crash, right? It's got this incredible power, and it shapes the landscape. So our emotions and our resonance, right? This really does have a lot to do with what is our resonance. And because water crystals, right? The hidden messages of water, even though water has this crystalline structure at a molecular level, it is shaped by resonance. And you see that in other types of studies with magnetic filaments in changing geometric patterns based on magnetic resonance and it changing frequency. So when we're talking about the reversal of this, though, of course, this can be inverted, right? So the idea here is that we're at this undifferentiated source of love and spirit and flow and vibration and resonance. And you can even see how it's like a toroidal field, right? You have this resonance kind of vibrating off of this cup. We are the cup in some ways, right? We allow ourselves to be filled from above and below. And that's what you see in this picture, above and below, coming into both places and then resonating outwards. This is how we attract, and magnetize into our experience what it is that is a match for us, or this is essentially the secret, right? But incredibly distorted and hijacked in order to create a reality for somebody else's benefit. And that's what we're experiencing and have been for so long. And it's just now that we're starting to wake up and see it. And so, when it's reversed, I mean, like I said, it could be this inversion. So there's bitterness and loneliness. Like you don't feel like the cup is being filled and you don't feel like your field is full and reverberating. It could be a lot of inversion about this. But based on everything else in this reading, what I do see here in this reversal is that, especially because we're at this equinox point, which does signify that the dark is now here, right? We're at this balance point that is inseparable from, it is the keystone, the linchpin of reality, of this reality, of 3D reality, is the polarity that is the essence of creation and transformation. So we can't get away from it. But what with this equinox point, especially coming into Libra, is distinctly that there is a shadow, that there is darkness, and it's going to get, and especially in the northern hemisphere. In the southern hemisphere, it's a completely different situation. They're coming into spring, so their light is coming back, and so you see the polarity rippling off it's concentric circles. It's this beautiful concentric circle, micro macro type of thing, and this mirror. Oh, mirror, gosh. Oh, the looking glass. There's always one distinct 0 point, though, once you get to that event horizon, and that's what looking glass ultimately was showing over and over and over. Eventually, there is no way to escape the grasp of that black hole, which is what the event horizon is. So what I do see here, based on everything else, though, in this reversal, certainly could be this inversion, and you're feeling all of these negative feelings, and some people are. And didn't we talk about that Prince of Wands being reversed a couple days ago, where people were going to start, the destruction and the restlessness and the impulsiveness would start coming out in relation to others finding their balance. So, but what this does suggest to me is that we have to acknowledge that there is no light without the shadow, right? As above, so below. You can't necessarily have the light without acknowledging the shadow. And there's been a lot of different ways that this narrative has been also distorted in order to keep us from acknowledging what the hell is actually happening all around us, right? We are like collectively at a global level, and this is falling apart, of course, but people are still engaged in it, a process of dissociation, because we're experiencing trauma on a regular basis just by being on this planet. And instead, the ego is an amazing tool that allows us to survive, and the psyche will dissociate. Oh my God! If you're familiar with the, it was made into a movie, and I believe it was a book. Sybil, right? Who had like 50 personalities or something to them, probably more than that, because she, as a child, was exposed and subjected to horrific torture that nobody ever knew about from a sadistic, very mentally ill mother. And so she developed like personality after personality after personality. And this is what the psyche does. It dissociates in order to keep you from completely fracturing because being present in a moment where you're being traumatized and tortured is going to just you will fracture at a site, and the ego is here to protect us. That's what it's here to do. It's an incredible tool. It shouldn't be the only thing that's driving, but it absolutely has its purpose, and it's how we survive. And so we're dealing with this still, and there's so many different ways that this is happening that people think that they're not doing this. But we have to acknowledge what is, and part of that is acknowledging that there is a darkness, there is death, there is destruction, there is the underworld, there is the shadow, and beauty and ugly are two poles belonging together. And the reality is that the lotus flower needs the mud in order to blossom. It needs to go down into the muck and the mud. And Venus in Scorpio has been so aptly timed, because as uncomfortable as it is to be sensitive to this reality, the fact that she is there right now, like kind of as the goddess doing that work for us, and not even doing it for us, but like paving the way, giving us something to tap into, giving us a way to be sensitive to those things in a way that we can still find comfort and security somewhere, right? Even in the midst of going into these spaces. So this causal factor here of this Ace of Cups reversed is really highlighting the fact that there's, turn the cup upside down and it still pretty much looks the same, except that, the top of it is certainly pouring out, but it's the same thing. It's pouring in and it's pouring out, and you're still reverberating. But this is not to say that we are supposed to be reverberating out a fear narrative. That's not what this is about. This is about accepting the truth, and so you can stand in your power. How do you hack your shadow if you can't even admit there is one? This is admitting that there is one, and it's not comfortable. It's the opposite of comfortable. And many of us have experienced so many traumatic things in our lives that are priming us to not look away. So take it as a guide point right here, and a priming and a calibration, and stand in your power, because your power comes from both poles right now, and your power is very much related to water and the emotional feeling based resonance that comes from us. Okay, so when we come to our present moment, here are 9 of discs, speaking of Venus in Virgo. 9 of discs, this is gain, right? This is fully satisfied and gathering in the crops. This is at the heart here between our conscious experience, right? That cause and effect linear relationship, and then where our axis of power is within each of us. And at the cross point is the heart. That is the nexus. I mean, if you look at the Christian cross, for God's sakes, there you have it right there. The center is this right here. It is this, and this. And it's not at the midpoint of your body. It's at your top of your torso. That's why it's developed. That's why it's actually symbolized that way, at least in my opinion. I can't say that for sure. I'm just saying that's how I am interpreting it. So this is full satisfaction, right? Venus loves to be satisfied, by the way. Fully satisfied, gathering in the crops. This is maybe a successful healing process. Perhaps this is a health and healing from an illness, healing from an injury, something that we have put effort and energy into, right? Because Virgo is about the actual process of going under the soil and supporting the fruit, and everything is gathered in. This is the harvest in some ways, and being fully satisfied with what we have accomplished and really basking in it and being satisfied with it. Now, and it's upright, so I don't feel like that this is not an inverted sense of like self-satisfaction. This is really pulling in everything that we have been doing within ourselves and really doing in order to purify ourselves at this receptive level. Go back to the new moon. What was the intention that we set within each of us? It was to listen and to receive something woven together, not just from our work, but that comes from where we've been and where we're going, some sort of cohesion based on the determination and the courage and the dedication that we've all put forward in this process. And now I feel like as much as we are facing some really disruptive energy, and believe me, Venus is going to be in an opposition to Uranus tomorrow. So again, there's going to be a real tug on that disruptive, radical reorientation in our material environment that's going to, be instigated by Venus in Scorpio being really uncomfortable with going into those places, tugging on that. So it's not surprising that we're seeing a lot of activity, because Venus rules. Remember, Venus rules Taurus, right? It's not surprising that we're seeing a lot of this seismic activity right now, as we're approaching this major transit with Uranus and Taurus. So, but at the center here, even with the recognition that there is no separating the beauty from the ugly, the shadow and the light, the death and rebirth, there's no separating them. They are two of the same, and this is part of being able to tap into the full picture here and the equinox potential here. We also, there's a sense of feeling comfortable and satisfied with everything that has happened. And this takes real mastery when things around you seem to be falling apart, okay? Now, where can we draw our power from in this moment? Here's our Queen of Roses, right? Love and support and love and support, right? Loving energy, supporting energy from an emotional standpoint. Look at, she's got this rose in her hand and she's giving it all her full attention, being present with that part of ourselves, giving it love, giving it support, giving it attention, being compassionate. Now, the court cards will represent actual people. And I would say that we can really draw our power today at this equinox point by embodying this. Regardless of what your gender identity or your sex is, this is about an archetype of pulling in this very reflective, empathic, pure and loving energy from the planet, right? Pulling in that energy from our own Gaia. Who is our mother and represents fertility and represents, the sacred feminine, and pulling in. And again, the roses are the water, the emotion, the spirit. And so pulling in that spirit, that emotion, that really strong resonance of love and support, and embodying that within ourselves. And we see at the top here, another queen, the Queen of Keys. Now, this is a woman of authority, right? This is where we can release that energy, where we can put our conscious awareness, where our power, we release our public power, our professional power, our conscious attention can be focused on building and moving towards this authority, right? Also sensitive because it's the queen, right? It's still receptive. She's sensitive, she's helpful, she's thoughtful. She is a woman of authority, and she's confident in the world, what she has around her that is material, her kingdom. And so we can really release all of this energy into, again, embodying this very sensitive and thoughtful and helpful energy, but also confident in the world around us. What we have gained, look at this, what we have gained, Venus in Virgo. What have we gained so far? We can really embody this role in terms of the way that we release it out into the world. Because speaking of the world, here is our outcome, the universe. This is the last card in the major arcana. The world or the universe. Notice it is Saturn. Okay, Saturn and Capricorn. Capricorn is the home territory of Saturn. This is a feminine sign. Capricorn is a feminine sign because it's Earth. Earth has a feminine signature. So, Saturn gets this, this at times is often characterized, especially in a mythological context, as male because it's a father figure and father time, right? And that's not to say that that's inaccurate, but you have to also accept that Capricorn as the matrix of nature unfolding is distinctly a feminine signature, right? It's cardinal Earth. So there's momentum, right? It is the unfolding of the fractal, but it's still feminine, right? You're not pushing, you're not thrusting, you're not moving. It's not something that is pushing outwards like the masculine energy of action and outward. It's an unfoldment, right? And it is very again, cardinal earth. It is the earth actually moving. It is the earth actually unfolding. And it does represent institutions, very strong institutions. It represents the law of nature. Like, you're not breaking that while you're still in physical form. I mean, granted, technology is attempting to do those things. And then there have been advances that have, broken that law of nature through the use of our intellect and our technology. And that's a conversation for a different time, but still, it's a way to consider it. Now, the universe is the end of the line. Neptune as cosmic consciousness. You can see that kind of like in this circular energy, in this circular imagery right now. You also see water shooting out of all of these masks, right? You see an eye that's like beaming out. You see this serpent that is coiled around, and it's a woman. It's a feminine figure that's holding the serpent, and it's very much a cycle coming to an end. It also is Pluto as the power of creation, and we talked about creation is transformation. Pluto is our power, our deep, raw power of transformation, because it is the representation of the underworld, the shadow, the death that precedes rebirth. You have to have both of these elements in order to create in this physical universe. So, but it does represent Saturn, because that whole picture of cosmic consciousness and the power of transformation is what gives us the physical world, the material world, the natural law. So at the end of the cycle here, this is a reference to the fact that the work is done. This is where we're headed. We're going to reach a goal here. It's been achieved, and this is what's going to unfold, right? There's a harmony between our spirit and our body, because again, cosmic consciousness of Neptune, the transformation of Pluto, and the power of transformation. There's a harmony here that allows for the physical universe to unfold in accordance to natural law. So there's an inner independence that comes along with this, because you understand this whole picture. We just had the reading yesterday with the Eon that ended with the Tower, because again, the Eon is the rising of the Phoenix. It's the experience of the cycle coming back around and destruction leading to transformation. This is the next card, which is the full picture in its entirety, right? Not so much the experience of the judgment, if you want to, or the rapture, or whatever. That's the Rider-Waite, the original tarot symbolism of the Eon, is judgment and the rapture. But this is much more about the full picture coming into our awareness. And again, you have the sacred feminine being brought forward. You have the serpent. I mean, there's a reason that certain aspects of the Abrahamic religions, especially the Christian doctrine, has made us absolutely terrified of the power of the serpent, because without understanding it fully, you don't understand yourself, you don't understand your role in nature, and you don't understand those who utilize it for exploitation and self-preservation, right? It's important that you understand this power so that you can see it when it's being exploited. But anyway, this really shows that we're going to get to a moment of achievement here. And that's part of, again, the equinox point is that 0 point. It's that stasis moment of balance that the sun illuminates in its transit into Libra, that shows us the perfect form. The perfect form is the world ultimately, but it comes from our interpersonal relationships. And this is so... We're going to go into the guidance because it's showing us exactly what we need to do here. Number one, the Seven of Forces. Oh, are we unbalanced? Are we having a hard time here? The Mountain Goat says so as well. The Queen of Roses. This, again, is about that loving, supportive energy that we can draw our power from. But this is if you're struggling with this is showing us that we're out of balance. Right? We just had it of balance not that long ago. See how easily we get collectively pulled off and then come back in, and pulled off and then come back into balance. It's a dance constantly, right? You can't ever settle. You can't ever stop. You have to allow yourself to move with the rhythm of the universe. I mean, That's really the trick here. So this is showing us that we're out of balance. So what can we do here if we're struggling to get into balance and resonance with this Queen of Roses embodiment, right? There's a difficult situation that's causing a loss of clarity, right? One thing I could say is, people getting sick, people going back into the hospital, people having injuries, people having, being subjected to a massive earthquake or a volcano erupting and having to evacuate, right? There are lots of things that are pulling us out of balance. There's a situation that seems incredibly unjust that is also unbalanced. It's important that we don't seek revenge or, get caught up in our anger or our fear-based focus, because that's not going to help find balance either. And we don't want urgent attachment to create more difficult karma for ourselves. That's the other thing that, again, we can't really embody this Queen of Roses to give us really focused, loving attention to something emotional and feeling based and our own spirit, right? If we are getting pulled off balance by a sense of urgency. And you see the tortoise up here comes back, right? So this is a big deal, right? Because again, when we have this Venus in an opposition to Uranus coming tomorrow, and of course Mercury is in a square to Pluto today in conjunction with Arcturus. We'll get there, okay? You don't want urgent attachment so that you create more karma, and you don't want to make it difficult for yourself. You don't want to get involved in revenge, right? Consider how your choices are going to impact your future, right? That's also part of Libra. It's not just about us now. We have to think about other aspects to this whole picture. And so fate is nothing more than a cause and effect relationship. And every single moment is an opportunity to impact our individual fate, which will then reverberate out in a catalyzed effect, right? A chain reaction. But it happens in every moment, every choice we make, every behavior that we have, every time that we engage at an energetic level. Excuse me, guys. Here we go. Every time we engage at an energetic level with reinforcing the divisiveness, then we're pretty much putting that into action at some level. So take action to achieve balance. Don't take action for revenge or trying to, keep feeding the divisiveness. It's really easy to do when you get pulled off balance. And again, there's the mountain goat. Speaking of being pulled off balance, there's something out of balance in your life. Do what you need to do to correct it. There's a continual interplay between polarities, right? You have to be present. You have to be present, and you have to be in tune with your innate, with your gut, with your body, so that you know what energy feels like in your body, and that is going to give you the guidance that you need. But you have to be aware of it. If you keep staying in your mind exclusively, you won't feel what's out of balance. And so make sure your body is in balance, your emotions are in balance, your mind is in balance. And if they get off balance because you're subjected to some really stressful situation, it's okay. There's an opportunity to practice, right? To bring it back into balance. But this is pretty clear that many people are finding themselves out of balance, and we have to look at this. You can see again these concentric circles that are like reverberating. It's like a ripple effect. And what's the mountain goat? It represents Capricorn, the straight and narrow, right? The mountain goat is one foot in front of the other, steady as she goes up the mountain. There's no room to do anything else. And there's certainly, mountain goat is not going to be like, sitting in oh, never mind. The mountain goat is not, it doesn't think about it. It doesn't feel about it. It just, it feels what's under each hoof, right? And very, very tuned into the landscape and how to maneuver up to the mountain. But it's certainly not using its mind to rationalize all of these things, and certainly not going into a rabbit hole thinking that it's going to get up the mountain. We need to be in balance, and this will allow us to give loving attention to ourselves and our soul, right? And our soul. And this is hard right now with the moon in Aries. In some ways it's not, because we are certainly driven to be very hyper-focused on ourselves, but also too, it really is inflaming and agitating quite a bit. Now here's our tortoise, right? This was just up yesterday. You're too fragmented. Do what it takes to be grounded. So if you want to be a confident person in your material reality, sensitive, thoughtful, but confident in your authority, again, slow down, pace yourself, get grounded. Slow and steady wins the race, right? You don't want to get caught up in the, because that is all pulling us out of balance. And just bring it back in, right? Bring it, just like in meditation. When you start to veer off, you just lovingly bring it back to center. You don't like say, oh, I can't meditate and just quit, right? That's why it's called a practice. It's going to take your whole life. There's reason that these yogis would go into a cave for their entire freaking lives and not be exposed to anything, because it's so difficult to be in this world and not of it, right? And this is exactly what, the teachings of the Christ, basically, right? And Buddha. How do you do this, right? Well, it takes being present in every single moment and making a choice in every single moment. But you have to get grounded. You have to slow down. You have to pace yourself. Now, what's interesting about this Five of Roses reversed, right? The garden. So you see these two children, they're totally themselves. One is investigating the butterfly, the other's got the slingshot. They're in this beautiful garden that is protected with a fence, a wrought iron fence and a gate, but it's not blocking anything out. And in fact, that most of it is a natural, like plant-based barrier, but there is a little bit of human intervention here with this little bench. And they're not sitting on the bench. They are in the garden playing. So there's been something here that's created this, right? But these children are not focused on that. They're focused on being themselves. So it does, Five of Roses is like about children and the innocence and playfulness and feeling safe to be themselves. Now, when it's reversed, it really does suggest that people are playing the blame game and not feeling safe. They are not feeling like they can be themselves. And like I said, the blame game and the constant externalizing and judgment is a big part of this being reversed. It's important to be patient and compassionate with yourself and other people, especially if they are like freaking out and not feeling this way. Let things unfold as they will. And again, compassion, be patient. That's a big part of the Virgo energy. We're still in this lunar cycle that started with Virgo, even though the sun has moved into Libra today, or will. We're still at the very last degree of the sun in Virgo currently. So be patient, compassion. Let things unfold as they may. You don't have to get pulled into somebody else's like drama. Again, the tortoise, get grounded, slow and steady, pace yourself. Don't get pulled into a false sense of urgency, because it's going to get really easy. Imagine two children getting dumped out of this garden and having no idea why, right? There's going to be a sense of urgency and not taking, children don't understand really, what it means to take responsibility for themselves. That's something they have to like learn and be taught over time and experience. And so when we're in that young and very emotionally vulnerable state and we get dumped out of our comfort zone here, it's really easy to kind of just like, start to blame everybody else and to get really caught up in the drama of it. So again, bring yourself back to center here. The equinox is like this natural point in order for us to do this. So let's look at the astrology, shall we? All right, guys. I hope everyone's doing well. I'm going to check in with the chat real quick here and see how it's going and if the stream is going well. It seems to be going so far. All right, so my friends, here is the 22nd. Today is our spring, yes, for some people it is the spring equinox. For us in the north, it is the autumn equinox, the harvest. So either way, we are finding our balance point and we are about to move into a new era of light and dark. So first we'll look at where we are. Here's our moon in Aries, and we just passed Chiron yesterday. So what I want to talk about first, before we even get into the moon, is we're going to talk about this right now, this square with, let me make sure that you guys are, this square here with Mercury in conjunction with Arcturus. So we are at Arcturian activation right now. Arcturian starseed activation with Mercury, so really accessing from our mind, which is really interesting. this deep wisdom, right? This deep wisdom through our conceptual, through our nervous system, right? Through the functioning of our nervous system, through our mind, through our communication, right? Mercury representing all of those types of things. And in that square to Pluto, which is our raw power of transformation. Right. So a square, right? Cross purposes, 90-degree angle. And you're talking about cardinal energy, cardinal air, cardinal earth, right? So they have a lot of momentum behind them. And they are, so when they meet in that T-bone, right? When they come together in that angle, there's a likelihood that they'll spin off into totally new directions because they already have this momentum behind them as cardinal. So Mercury in a conjunction with Arcturus is really some very strong opinions. And I talked about this yesterday, strong opinions, a very deep sense of knowing, right? Knowing, it's knowing. It's not even just guesswork, it's knowing, and knowing at the deepest levels of the universe, right? The Arcturians hold the keys to how the universe actually functions in a balanced way. So Arcturian star seeds tend to find themselves attracted to vocations that have to do with mathematics, natural sciences, sacred geometry, ley lines, crop circles, ancient civilizations, for instance. Vocations that are even more hands-on, like architecture, design, feng shui is a big one that I think is connected to the Arcturian star seeds. You know, things like sustainable development, sustainable communities. Arcturian starseeds tend to transmit knowledge and information and wisdom through other means besides verbal. So telepathy is very strong with Arcturian starseeds. Communicating through color, through sound, through pattern is also very much an Arcturian starseed trait, because all of those things, sound, color, pattern, they all hold their own frequency and resonance. And that's really what the Arcturians are masters of and teachers of, right? And so Arcturian starseeds also tend to be in positions of teaching, right? They transmit and they teach. My Arcturian starseed nature is on my 9th house cusp. So there you go. So I am also having this activating my 9th house. And so 9th house is kind of the dissertation, right? The professor, the higher learning, the foreign travel, like the big picture, right? Just like the world, the big picture, the 9th house is. So in square to Pluto, though, this is a raw experience of destruction of the very institutions of our reality, the very nature of our reality in a lot of ways, where Pluto retrograde is. Pluto will station direct on the new moon on the 6th, the new moon in Libra, by the way. So, and then it's game on. Right now, this is all very much an internalized process where we're all getting an opportunity to really experience what this feels like on a personal and internal level. And so this square will happen again later because of Mercury stationing retrograde at the end of September. So Mercury station retrograde, go back to 10 to 11 degrees, which is where it was on this new moon that was in Virgo. And then when it goes direct, it will come back and meet Pluto again. It'll meet Pluto in its retrograde one more time, and then it'll come back in its prograde much later in November and meet Pluto again. So there's going to be 2 more instances of Mercury at Arcturus meeting Pluto. So this isn't the first time. So pay attention to how this feels, what's going on in your mind, your communication, your ideas, the realm of your actual nervous system and how it's functioning, because how it feels in this moment when you take this big picture knowing with Mercury at Arcturus and put it up against the experience of the destruction, that discomfort is going to teach us a lot, and we're going to grow a lot, and it's going to be supremely uncomfortable. But our gnosis in this moment is really going to be why it's going to be so uncomfortable, because it'll just be like, I see the big picture, but I still have to go through the experience of the destruction. So this square happens, right? It's happening now, basically. It's happening now. And then right after that is when the sun comes into there you go, comes into Libra for the equinox point, right? Here we go. It's going to be between 3 and 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So then the sun illuminates that balance point. And so we're still coming right off of this square. And then you have the sun coming to meet, coming into Libra for the equinox point and being like, here is your balance point between light and dark, shadow and light, right? Up and down, masculine, feminine. This is that 0 point. It's the perfect form that Libra truly represents in its distilled essence at that 0 degrees. Okay. And so we can really express ourselves, our full creative potential through this moment here. And I think that this will certainly give us something to focus on at the same time of this supreme discomfort of this square. And when Venus comes into an opposition with Uranus tomorrow, again, we're going to feel major disruption in our material world, in our comfort, right? That's what Venus, she wants to be comfortable, right? She wants to be comfortable. But she also wants to be where Uranus is, because that's her home territory of Taurus. And so in some ways, she's going to kind of like be okay with that level of discomfort because she's at least sensitive to the material environment. It's the fact that she's in the Scorpio realm of the underworld that's really where she's uncomfortable. So it's going to be interesting. It's certainly going to be interesting. So let's look at the moon. Like I said, we are, the moon will then, after this happens, is going to come into a sextile with Jupiter in Aquarius, right? And we're now getting really close to where asteroid Eris, or dwarf planet Eris is, the goddess of discord. That's actually going to be the point where the moon is going to square Pluto and oppose Mercury, right in conjunction with Eris. So as if the chaos isn't going to be, as if it's not chaotic enough, just wait until the chaos is like right here in our emotional reality, in connection, in a very in a very tense connection to both Pluto and Mercury. But this moon in sextiles are our moment of opportunity here, our investment opportunity, because we can be, if we can be open to the influx of spiritual energies and be molded in some ways, not necessarily, and we have to be very discerning about what this means, but we don't want to be totally closed off. We want it's like the wind blowing in through the open window into the curtain, right? And so there's an openness to allow this energy, but we have to actually open the window, and we have to be discerning about who we're opening this window to. But let's just say, for example, we are opening this window to an energy that we trust is going to come in and mold us in a way that we want, that's going to fulfill our potency to really come into ourselves. We can do this, and when we allow this, we can invest this into where Jupiter is, which has been really supporting this process of overcoming the passion in order to teach from very deep wisdom. And Jupiter, as much as Jupiter is the ruler of the gods in a mythological context, right, Greek and Roman mythology, and as much as Jupiter is like this massive, expansive type of energy, it also does have this sense of like, I'm here to teach you and defend what is. And if you think about when you present your thesis in graduate school or your dissertation, what are you doing? You're defending it in front of your potential colleagues, like your future colleagues. You're defending your dissertation. And so that's what Jupiter is really doing. It's like a lawyer, right? A lawyer is defending or advocating, regardless of their position. The letter of the spirit of the law as they see it. And so if we allow in this influx of spiritual energies in just this moment, we can really invest this into the role Jupiter is playing right now, which is this very, is advocating for our own process of overcoming our passions to teach from a deep wisdom, right? If we keep getting pulled into our passion, and not in a negative, not when I say passion, I'm not suggesting here that it's positive or negative, but if it is the only thing that is running the show, then there is no deep wisdom to really teach from. And Jupiter is really supporting and defending this and advocating for it within each of us if we are able to really accept the challenge. And we're going to get a little bit of help, right? We're going to get a little bit of help in this moment here with the moon in Aries. And right from there, right away after this happens is when the moon then comes into that a T-square. Well, actually, the moon, it's Pluto that's the T-square between this opposition of being able to exist in two places at once. This is where the dwarf planet Eris is residing in Aries. 25 degrees Aries, right? We always round up for the Sabian symbol. 25 degrees Aries. This is the revelation of new potentials by being able to exist in two places at once, right? This is not using the concept of 5D as a fantasy land that you're going to just, put your head in or whatever, while you're waiting for something to happen. This is really about how you can straddle these, literally be in both places at once, because this is actually what this is all for. Right? It's not like it's going to separate, and I don't believe that that's what this is. It's about the unification that comes from being in a material form with the consciousness of the fifth dimension, which is unification. Right? But there's still polarity in that process. It just depends on where, what polarity you're working with. Right? It's going to come through the introduction of chaos. And this is, where Eris has been for quite a while now, is at this degree of Aries. And so the moon meeting that, we're going to have a very personalized experience in this moment, and in opposition to Mercury in conjunction to Arcturus, which knows, right? We know the big picture. We see the full cycle right out in front of us. We get it, right? We get it. The opposition is that we're living in an emotional, intuitive, very personal way, the chaos of it in that moment. And you can feel that tension. And it's going to be Pluto, interestingly enough, that is providing the focal point for this T-square, right? This is going to be the place that releases the tension, and it's going to be the power of our transformation as it destroys our very matrix of reality. When that happens, even though it's squaring both of these points, it's actually what allows us to harness the energy of this opposition. So we know, right, with Mercury in conjunction with Arcturus, we just know what the big picture is. Now we feel that we're existing in two places at once, distinctly. And there's chaos involved there, right? Eris, the goddess Eris, is the goddess of discord. She rolled the apple in to fuck with everybody and be like, you can't push me out, right? So we have to experience the chaos, and we will. And it's going to come from the actual, very lived, raw, powerful experience of Pluto destroying, right? And so whatever this means, right? We already saw that the tower moment was something that we were to expect as of yesterday. And now we're coming into this moment where we're going to, the outcome is the achievement of this goal, right? It is coming. And we have gotten everything up to this point and pulled it all in, and are really, can really find ourselves a certain amount of satisfaction with everything we've done up to this point, and now we get to release it into this process, and it's not comfortable. And like I said, Venus is going to be in an opposition to Uranus directly tomorrow, so expect more aftershocks, expect more actual movement on a material level that is really putting us it's really going to be challenging us. I want to read 15 degrees Scorpio, because I think that this is going to give us some insight into where the tension will be, because Uranus is at a point where we are, consistently being challenged to put our head down and brave the storm. This is where our character is truly revealed, and this is the pathway to the collective awakening, right? We can't deny this. Now, where Scorpio is and where Venus in Scorpio is really about future-oriented growth, right? It's about early steps in the development of a mind seeking to be attuned to a higher level of human evolution. So while we are grappling with that and dealing with that and trying to be sensitive to that and the power of it, we're going to be pulled out of that by the literal rumbling of reality. And again, our mastery point is finding that fulcrum here. We don't want to be so focused on where we're going and feeling into that we totally deny ourselves the opportunity in the moment to actually utilize the energy of the storm to help us evolve and grow, because that's what it's there for, and that's what Uranus always represents, right? It turns us on our side, yes. It radically reorients us in a flash of a moment, yes. But that's because that's the Stargate, right? That's the wormhole to the next place. So that's our equinox today, friends. So there will be no transmission tomorrow, and that's why I talked about Venus and Uranus going in that opposition. One thing that I will show you, though, let's just take a quick look for tomorrow on the 23rd, is that the moon's going to be in Taurus. So remember, the moon is exalted in Taurus. It's powerful in Taurus. We're going to feel very much wanting to embed ourselves into that medium, that we're going to feel driven for comfort and security and wanting to nestle into the environment. So keep that in mind, too, that the moon is going to pull us into that place. And there's a real strong likelihood of things being disrupted very much if we it just depends on where this at in your chart, depends on where you are in the world. It depends. It really does depend. And it depends on your perspective in some ways, how you're going to see this, right? That's where our choice comes from. So I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much, everybody. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. If you're interested in reading, I did put the flash sale up on my social media, so please go check it out so you can see what the flash sale is for. But if you're interested in a reading, this is a great time to cash in on something like that, because I have it at a discount, and it's energy work and the next lunar cycle and how it impacts your chart. Great way to get an idea if you have any starseed markings as well, because I can find those in the chart for you. And also, like I said, everything you need is in the description box below. So just go there and link to wherever you need to go link to, and you will find what you need. So thank you so much for being here. Don't forget to subscribe and like the channel. Regardless of what channel you're on, it really does support independent content creators like myself. And we'll be together on Friday. I really am hoping to put together something for the entire season, right? From equinox to solstice. It's important to look ahead and see what to expect in the longer term, especially with eclipse seasons, and especially with how important October is, because it's Pluto direct, Saturn direct, Jupiter direct, all in this season. And so that means that the engines are going to start flipping on, right? These large transpersonal planets that affect big cohorts of people are going to start flipping on, right? And so we want to be ready for that. We want to have some essence, some idea of what that, might mean to us, right? We can't control everything or anything except ourselves, but that's the benefit of astrology, right? It's a time traveling tool. It's a fourth dimensional modality that allows us to actually make that connection between the physical and the, the unification fifth dimensional, presence. And the real work is to bring these two together, right? Not to separate them. So I love you guys. I'll see you on Friday. Take care of yourselves. Really, truly take care of yourselves, and have a great day.